All right, I'd like to welcome everybody again to this SSIS Coffee Talk presentation on data entry into SSIS related to expectant and parenting youth. My name is Eric, and I work with the SSIS training unit and the Division of Child Safety and Permanency, and I'm a liaison with the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy. Today, we're going to be talking about links to our FFPSA website, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record during these webinars, but I do want information to be distributed equally throughout these webinars for individuals who have never attended them. So the agenda today is that we will be providing resources related to the FFPSA website, and links to these, some of these resources that I mentioned will be placed into the chat for everyone to review. So again, the FFPSA website through the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy is a site where individuals can go and watch previously recorded webinars, both the policy webinars as well as applicable SSIS coffee talks. And then you can also register through a link on that site for upcoming webinars. And I believe we only have one remaining webinar related to supervised independent living services that will occur on next Tuesday. But we are in talks to schedule an additional coffee talk in the future. So look for announcements. I'm sorry, not coffee talk, but policy webinar on Title 4E claiming as it relates to FFPSA, and that date will be announced within, I want to say, the next couple of weeks to present some of the fiscal implications for Title 4E claiming. But like I said, that will be announced within the next couple of weeks. So again, back to upcoming webinars, there's only one remaining after this one. You can register for it using that link to the FFPSA website. There is a visit here link to register for upcoming webinars. There's also going to be a link that we're going to throw into the chat for the EPY handout. That's kind of shortened for Expectant and Parenting Youth, and SSIS documentation handout. And that's just going to borrow information from a variety of different resources that we have available throughout or threaded throughout many of our webinars related to the new specialized settings related to Family First Prevention Services Act placements. We're also going to throw a link to the webinar completion form in maybe more toward the end of the presentation if it's not already been thrown into the chat, but I'll double check with my co-panelists here. And then what I'm going to show you before I move into the presentation are links to policy and SSIS help desk emails. So again, this is the Family First website through the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy. And again, you're going to find that Family First information under the More tab and Family First Prevention Services Act. We did add a new tile to this page so that you don't have to search up here in the menu bar. You'll see a tile that says FFPSA when you navigate to this page as well. And then I'm going to leave this slide up here just for a couple of minutes for individuals to write down specific contacts related to Family First. The first contact you see is for our foster care unit here in Child Safety and Permanency, and you can get information regarding residential service requirements using that email handle. And then if you have if you would like information regarding prevention service requirements, you can contact our safety unit using this second email handle. And then if you're an SSIS mentor and you're attending this session and you have specific questions about SSIS functionality, you can email the SSIS help desk at this final email handle listed on this slide. Again, the links are being thrown in the chat, so if you joined late, You may not see those links. We will go ahead and throw them in there again in a little bit. All right. And if I didn't leave this information up here for you long enough related to the contact information, just feel free to send a question in the Q&A or throw something in the chat that you'd like to see this slide again before I end my presentation today. All right. So one of the most common questions that I think we're getting throughout these webinars is how can you find providers that are certified in a lot of these different, these new specialized residential settings for family first prevention services, including, you know, sex trafficked or sexually, commercial sexual exploitation or at risk, and the PPY settings as well as QRTP. So before I get into the crux of the presentation today on EPY related information, I do want to show you a couple of avenues that individuals can take to look up this information. And Melissa and Molly are here to back me up and correct me if I get any of this information wrong. So I appreciate your guys' support. So I hope all of you can see my screen for SSIS. So one of the ways that you can look up providers who specialize in services for family first is by navigating to your searches and logs menu option in the Windows menu toolbar and clicking on it and then going to the Title 4E group provider search, which is right here. And there's been a field that has been added to the Title 4E provider search. You can select the provider name, the license number, Title 4E subcode if you happen to know it, or you can just simply search under rule code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate down to child residential facility. As much of this FFPSA information relates to group homes that are staff operated as well as residential facilities, group homes offering services up to 12 youth and residential facilities offering for 13 or more. So I'm going to select number 8 here, which is this child residential facility, and then I'm going to select search. You'll get a list of Title 4E providers, and this list, as I am aware, is updated every 24 hours. And what's happened to this is that there's been a services provided field that's been added to this grid. And correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa or Molly, QRTP or PPY or STCSE or at risk will appear under this services provided section to help agencies locate providers who are offering these types of services.
That's correct. Thanks,
okay.
Eric.
Yep. And then another way that individuals can look up this type of information is doing that DHS licensing lookup. And let me know, panelists, if you can't see this particular screen here, but that website is https:// licensing lookup. And when you enter a licensing type of residential facilities, so I'm going to click on under license type. I'm going to select children's residential facilities, and you'll see all kinds of options populate under additional CRF services. And if you navigate over here to the right-hand column, you'll see qualified residential treatment program, pregnant and parenting youth, sex trafficked, commercially sexually exploited or at risk, or that supervised independent living setting. And these are all FFPSA related group homes and residential facilities that you can look up using the licensing lookup.
Eric, you might want to mention too, or just show them about the foster resident setting license type 2, that the 4 certifications are also under that setting.
Under which setting?
Child foster residence, right above, right there.
Here? Okay.
Yep. The 4.
So child foster residence settings, this is for the group home type settings. You see the additional CFRS services related to FFPSA under child foster residence settings. And again, under that children's residential facilities, right? All right. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to throw them into the Q&A and we can try to address them toward the end of the presentation here. I just wanted to answer that question because, like I said, we've been getting a lot of questions about how to look up that information. And then based on the information that we received in our last webinar, it looks like 9 facilities are currently registering for the QRTP certification and 4 are registering for the PPY specialized licensed certification. I'm not quite sure where we're at with STCSE at the present moment or SILS, but that's the information related to QRTP and PPY with the latest information that I have. All right, I'm going to close out of all my windows and I'm going to find the work group that I'm going to be using today to walk through our demonstration. Now, some of the information that I'm going to be providing to you today has to do with AFCARS, which is that Adoption Foster Care Analysis and Reporting System. And it does tie into this Family First because you do have to perform some actions in SSIS to link this AFCARS required information to specialized living settings related to FFPSA. And I don't think I've really ever done a thorough training on EPY before, or Expectant and Parenting Youth, formerly known as Pregnant and Parenting Youth. So give me a second here to bring up my information and then we'll get started. So I'm going to navigate to the work group, the training work group that I have put together for most of these trainings. And I'm going to open it in a new window. And I'm going to navigate to the participants folder. Under Stacy Snow, she's been our youth client throughout this training. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate down to her Expectant and Parenting Youth folder. As I indicated previously, this was the Pregnant and Parenting Youth folder. We included the word expectant to include expecting fathers and changed some of the information related to this folder. So what I want to do is show you the functionality of this screen. So I'm going to click on the folder itself and let you know that the Expectant and Parenting Youth screen is required by the Adoption and Foster Care Analysis and Reporting System, otherwise known as AFCARS. This screen is for youth aged 10 years and older in a continuous placement with a start date on or after September 1st of 2020. So this has been in action for about a year now. And then just to kind of go over some high-level functionality here. Going forward, if no changes are needed to a current screen that you've created for Expectant and Parenting Youth, you just have to update the last review date, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here momentarily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on the Expectant and Parenting Youth folder and select New Expectant and Parenting Youth. This screen is required, again, for youth ages 10 years and older who are in an out-of-home placement. The screen will start with help text, and it's a hyperlink to the help text to provide guidance on the use of this screen. So you simply would click that, and it would provide you overall information about what the screen is asking for and how to fill out bits and pieces of information should you have any questions. Again, the link to the handout is also posted in the chat for your reference. So we get to the first question. Has the youth ever fathered or bore a child? And it's pretty self-explanatory that you would either select yes or no to this question. So for our particular training purposes today, I'm going to just say yes, that the youth has fathered or bore a child. When I select yes to this question, the next question becomes required, and that is the youth parenting one or more of their biological children? And then you're going to also use the radio buttons to answer that question. In parentheses here, it says, if yes, ensure all birth parent and child relationships are entered on the relationship screen. So it's just a reminder to enter relationships for for the mother and father, or mother and child, sorry. For training purposes today, I'm going to say yes, they are parenting. And then the next field that is required on this screen, whether or not you answer no to either of these questions, is the youth expecting or expectant? And when you click the drop down, this has changed as it relates to the latest release. Prior to this, if an individual was male, that it was not an option to select the father. So in the current release, we have yes, we have a pregnant female, yes, we have an expectant male, or the answer to this question could be no if neither are applicable. So for training purposes today, I'm going to select yes, pregnant female. Oh, no, I'm not. She's not pregnant. But if she were, you would select yes. And then the next field, expected due date, would be required. However, if you select no, then the expected due date obviously is not enabled. This screen requires, and I said this earlier, and it might provide a little bit more context to you now, that the last review date is required every 6 months. So there is no alert or reminder that is set in SSIS to alert a worker to come in and put in a new review date every 6 months. So you can set your own reminders in SSIS if you wish to remind you to do so, or use any other tools that you have, such as an Outlook calendar or what have you, to come in and put in the last review date every 6 months while this child is in out-of-home placement. So we're going to put in today's date for the last reviewed date. Then we have a comments section here, and we're going to enter additional information that may include, but is not limited to, an explanation of why the pregnancy ended, or an explanation of why the individual is not parenting one's child. The endless scenarios to be entered in here pertaining to an expectant or parenting youth. And excuse me for just 1 second. Now, if we've met with this child and created a plan for this child and decided that the best and most least restrictive setting for this child, or this youth, my apologies, is one of the new FFPSA specialized certified settings for pregnant and parenting youth, we would want to set up a placement in SSIS using the setting and reason codes that are applicable for PPY. And we've kind of covered these in previous webinars, but we're going to go over it again briefly. And this information is listed on page 4 of the handout that's been linked in the chat. So I'm now going to navigate down to my permanency folder. And I've already created a continuous placement for this person in several of the other webinars, and as well as a placements, locations, and absence screen, but I will walk you through the general functionality again. So at the top of your placement, location, and absence screen, the settings that are applicable for this applicable I like that word apparently, applicable certification of PPY are group home staff operated with, again, that reason of pregnant and parenting youth, or residential program with, again, a reason of pregnant or parenting youth. So your options under the setting include group home staff operated or residential program. So you'll want to make the appropriate selection. If it's a group home with 12 or fewer children, you'll choose that. If you're choosing a residential program with 13 or more children, you'll choose residential program. Then again, the reason of pregnant and parenting youth. And then when I choose pregnant and parenting youth, that applicable certification of PPY will automatically show up in this iteration of SSIS. So we set up the expectant and parenting youth information because it's required by AFCARS, but it's also required to link this expectant and parenting youth record to a specialized placement with an applicable certification of PPY. And the way that you link the EPY record is by going to your action menu and selecting toward the bottom, add existing expectant and parenting link. When you do that, a pop-up window will appear with help text at the top here that indicates add existing EPY link. When you click on that, you receive the help text. Wow, that's quite a bit of information. Youth must have an eligible EPY record for a PPY placement. If there is a record that indicates that the youth is pregnant or parenting their own biological child, then the record would appear in the dropdown. And then it goes on about some information about Title IV-E reimbursement, and that a youth in a placement with an applicable certification of PPY must have an expectant or parenting youth record that documents that the youth is either parenting one or more of their own biological children or is a pregnant female. If the youth is an expectant male, then the placement is not reimbursable by Title IV-E for an applicable certification setting for pregnant and parenting youth. So the father actually has to be parenting the child and not expectant to qualify for this Title IV-E reimbursement. I'm going to exit out of that help text, and from the dropdown, I'm going to select the EPY record that we just created. If you did not create your EPY record, you will not see the EPY record listed in the dropdown. So I'm going to bring it into the field, and then I'm going to select OK. And then it's going to ask me if I want to save the changes, and I'm going to say yes. And then to verify that I have linked the EPY record to the PPY placement, I can select the placements, locations, and absences folder, navigate to the current placement, and I will see an EPY. Ignore the at-risk, ignore it. You just see EPY. So EPY record is there, and that's how you verify that you have linked it to this particular placement. All right. So that is placements in SSIS for the specialized living setting of PPY. So to recap, we created an EPY record, we linked it to our placement, and then there's some other considerations in SSIS that have been added to the out-of-home placement plan. So what I'm going to do now is let SSIS finish thinking. And then I'm going to navigate to the out-of-home placement plan just to cover a couple of bits of information that are pertinent to expectant and parenting youth. We'll give it a second to think here. Grab a drink of coffee, grab a drink of water, and oh, good. All right. So now I'm going to navigate to my service plans. And again, this is a training environment. So I have several out-of-home placement plans set up just so that I could test them out. So we're going to pretend like we only see one. And I'm going to select this safety and permanency one that I've created for this particular client. And then I'm going to display my setup. For more information on how to use the setup tab, you can navigate to the FFPSA website through the Child Welfare Training Academy, and there is a posted SSIS coffee talk that goes more into detail. What I want to draw your attention to for this particular webinar is as we navigate down the setup tab, there have been some specialty questions that have been added to the setup tab to help SSIS decide how to put together the out-of-home placement plan template. So those specialty questions occur about halfway down the setup tab under use child or youth in this document. And then you see the question, youth is expectant parenting. I'm just going to change the answers here to these. I was mostly just saying yes to those to see what screens I would get, but this particular training, we're dealing with somebody who's expectant or parenting their child. So we are placing them in a setting that is PPY, and I am saying yes to the expectant or parenting question. And then I would complete the additional setup here using the continuous placement, the placements in locations and absences. And again, you would see those once they're entered into SSIS under the permanency folder. And I'm going to now navigate over to my document tab and just talk a little bit about the title page. And I did kind of highlight some of this information in the previous policy webinar. So sorry if I sound like a broken record. But there has been information at the top of the title page here that has been added based on how you answered the question for the expectant or parenting youth on the setup tab. And as you can see, it says yes. So you'll want to double check and verify that information. And then you can add names and relationships of individuals who you're consulting with to set up this particular out-of-home placement plan. And then when you navigate down the navigation screen here, you'll see that an expectant or parenting youth section is added into the template because you answered yes on the setup tab. So we'll just navigate there and we'll notice the tabs that are the sub tabs that are associated with the expectant or parenting youth. So you have the expectant or parenting youth detail. If the youth meets the criteria of expectant or parenting youth, this screen identifies the exact status. The screen is also to document placement prevention services and agencies' efforts to engage other supports, such as the other parent and community supports. So information is available in the dropdown. You can fill information out in the necessary fields. And general out-of-home placement plan functionality, whenever you see this blue editor button, you can click on it and we'll bring you to the SSIS editor for this particular question. And you can see a whole screen versus just this small little window of text. The next screen you'll see is the location placement detail for the child or children of a parenting youth. And the location of the youth and their children might be different. So we're going to use this screen to identify the location and foster care placement status of the parenting youth's child or children and check all that apply, and then enter additional comments that may capture the situation in the narrative text boxes. So again, you have those narrative text boxes and that blue editor button to expand and add information on a full page. The next screen is the healthcare and early education providers for the children. This screen is to document the healthcare providers and education or early childhood development information for the child or children that are not in foster care of parenting youth. Enter the contact information for each provider and type in the name of the child or children that correspond to the listed provider. This screen is not required, but the optional healthcare and educational providers for the child or children screen may be useful to support parenting youth in placement with meeting the needs of their children. And then underneath the expectant and parenting youth header, we have the subheader of the final services and support, and pretty self-explanatory here. You're going to describe the services or related concerns the youth and the agency or tribal caseworker could not agree on. Again, you have a text field and a blue editor button if you need more space. And then there is also expectant and parenting youth information related to the placement and permanency heading of the navigation screen. Under the 10 best interest factors, you'll see additional placement considerations. And when you click on the additional placement considerations, you have an individualized determination of needs, additional placement considerations, and you'll only fill out information on this tab that is applicable to the youth that you're creating this plan for. So as you navigate down, you'll see best interests of expectant or parenting youth listed under this, above this first text field. And again, you'll enter that information that is applicable for additional placement considerations. So you'll describe how the placement, let me go back up here. Best interests of expectant or parenting youth, you'll use this text field to describe how the placement with the current foster care provider supports the best interests of the expectant or parenting youth, including preserving the relationship between the youth and their children. So to recap today on what we've covered, you're going to fill out that EPY record for the participant. If they're placed in a specialized living setting for pregnant and parenting youth, you're going to link that EPY record. And regardless of whether they're placed in a PPY setting and they're pregnant and parenting and they're placed in any type of setting, you're still going to add that information to the out-of-home placement plan for expectant fathers, pregnant or parenting mothers, etc. So I just wanted to put that out there. The out-of-home placement plan section isn't just added solely for the family first related circumstances or policy. So I don't see too many questions populating in the Q&A. Do you guys have any questions about EPY in SSIS, or any questions about the handout provided or any of the information that I've provided for you today? Please feel free to put them in the Q&A. All right, well, before we adjourn for the day, I just wanted to let everybody know and remind everybody that we do have a webinar completion form if you need to provide proof of attendance of these webinars. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw that link in the chat. Hope it looks like we have a question. And then you can fill this out and keep the return receipt for your records for licensing or your supervisor. Brenda, what option don't you see?
Eric, I had answered it.
Oh,
She is
okay.
not able to see the service provided column in the Title 4E per diem report. Brenda, I'll reach out to you. It was implemented in this last release. So I'd like to maybe just take a look at your screen and see why you're not able to see it.
Oh, she doesn't see the services provided in the search. Oh, okay.
No.
Is that because it's not slated to go out until September 30th?
No, it's in production now.
Okay.
It's available, so
okay.
I'm not sure why she doesn't have the option in the grids in order to add it to her columns, but if anybody else has issues with that too, please reach out to the help desk. But I'm able to see it in other counties, so I'm not really sure why it would be just specifically to her.
Okay. All right, and then before we, I want to thank everybody again for joining us for this webinar. Again, Tuesday is kind of the 10th and final FFPSA webinar that we have scheduled for now. But do look out for an announcement related to Title 4E claiming. The reason why we're not in a hurry to do the Title 4E claiming piece is because claiming isn't going to really start until 2022, but policy is working diligently on coming up with a presentation in October, and be on the lookout for that announcement. So I definitely appreciate all of you attending.